I remember the first time I drove through the Rocky Mountains. The air was so cold it cut right through your face, and every curve revealed a town frozen in time. Chimneys smoking, wooden signs and streets that seemed to whisper old stories. It felt as if the 1960s had pressed pause and no one had ever dared to hit play again. In those places, there are no Starbucks, no screens everywhere, just coffee and ceramic mugs, and neighbours who still pay in cash. While the rest of the country raced toward the future, these towns chose to stay the same, because they understood something most have forgotten. Life doesn't always get better when it speeds up. Today, I want to take you to the 25 mountain towns in Colorado where time stood still, where the past is still alive, and people seem happier for it. One still has a drive-in theatre where families watch movies from the back of their pickup trucks. Another, a record store that unwraps new vinyl every Friday. And I wonder, when was the last time you got lost without GPS and actually enjoyed it? So buckle up, roll down the window, and join me as we explore the 25 mountain towns frozen in time across Colorado's high country, each one cozier than the last. Let's start with number 25. Leadville. Leadville, the highest incorporated city in the United States, perched over 10,000 feet, was once a bustling mining hub. Its streets still preserve Victorian architecture, and walking through them feels like stepping back in time. Yet its reinvention as a tourist and cultural destination has stalled. Home prices doubled between 2018 and 2022, while wages barely moved. Today, listings pile up and buyers vanish. The problem is structural. Leadville depends on seasonal tourism that no longer sustains the economy. Young people leave for opportunities in Denver or Boulder, and those who remain face an impossible housing market. Inventory far exceeds demand, and properties sit unsold for months. What was once a symbol of mining resilience now feels like a museum frozen in time. The paradox is that Leadville still carries a romantic aura: ski races, summer festivals, mining history told on every corner. But that aura doesn't pay the bills. Local businesses struggle with a lack of steady customers, and newcomers discover that life at 10,000 feet is harsher than they imagined. The result is a town trapped between nostalgia and reality. A place that seems to have pressed pause and no longer knows how to hit play. Number 24. Frisco. Frisco was marketed as the affordable alternative to Breckenridge. For years, it was the refuge for those who couldn't afford the exorbitant prices of its famous neighbour. But that narrative collapsed. Inventory shot up 80% in a single year, and restrictions on short-term rentals drove investors away. Half-finished condo complexes line the highway, silent witnesses to a boom that evaporated. Main Street still bustles with tourists, but behind the storefronts, the housing market is paralysed. Locals complain that prices remain out of reach, while investors see no profitability. Frisco became an overflow market that pushed out its original residents. Today, the town faces a dilemma: keep up the tourist facade or admit that its economic model is broken. The irony is that Frisco still projects the image of a vibrant town, with festivals, restaurants, and quick access to the mountains. But that vitality is superficial. Empty condos and unsold homes reveal the other side: a saturated market with no real buyers. Frisco's future depends on whether it can reinvent itself beyond tourism and short-term rentals. For now, it feels stuck in economic limbo. Number 23. Glenwood Springs. Known for its hot springs and as the gateway to Aspen, Glenwood Springs faces an identity crisis. Delinquent taxes have reached levels not seen in 15 years. Locals can't afford homes, and investors no longer want them. The hot springs remain full, but the neighbourhoods are empty. The contrast is brutal. While tourists enjoy the pools, residential streets are lined with "for sale" signs that go unanswered. Local businesses struggle to survive, and the cost of living skyrockets. Glenwood Springs, once an accessible refuge, now feels like a town divided between postcard tourism and economic reality. The paradox is that the tourist appeal remains intact, but the community is unravelling. Residents complain that the town has become a place for visitors, not for living. The result is a space that looks prosperous on the surface, but is hollowing out from within. Number 22. Salida. Salida was marketed as an artistic town along the Arkansas River. Its colourful murals and galleries attracted creatives from across the country. During the pandemic, it became a refuge for those seeking an alternative lifestyle. With old houses turned into studios and cafes filled with live music. But the charm didn't stop the collapse. Rental vacancies rose 40% and buyers disappeared. The galleries remain, but sales have plummeted. Artists who came seeking inspiration now face impossible rents and a saturated market. Cultural tourism doesn't compensate for the lack of a solid economy. Salida feels like a painted stage, colourful, vibrant to the eye, but hollow inside. The artistic community struggles to survive while the housing market sinks. The contrast is painful. While visitors stroll the streets admiring murals, residents face the reality of a town that can no longer sustain them. Salida's bohemian identity has become a luxury few can afford. Number 21. Buena Vista. Buena Vista was promoted as mountain living without Aspen prices. That phrase aged poorly. Median incomes barely cover a $300,000 mortgage, but homes are listed at $700,000. Inventory piles up and families leave. The town, famous for its landscapes along the Arkansas River and outdoor activities, faces a paradox. Natural beauty attracts visitors, but drives residents away. Locals complain that the cost of living is unsustainable. Buena Vista, once a refuge for young families, is now slowly emptying out. New developments, designed for out-of-town buyers, sit vacant. Local businesses suffer from a lack of steady customers. Buena Vista has become a stopover town, attractive to tourists, but impossible for those who want to put down roots. Before moving on to town number 20 and keep discovering these places that awaken so much nostalgia in us, subscribe to my channel and leave a like if you'd love to live in one of them. Number 20. Nederland. The hippie enclave near Boulder became a hotspot for short-term rentals. For years, its alternative vibe attracted tourists and bohemian residents. But county restrictions destroyed demand. Homes sit on the market, and the quirky charm feels more like nostalgia than future. Nederland faces a dilemma: preserve its countercultural identity, or adapt to a market that no longer responds. Locals fight to keep the town's essence, but economic reality is relentless. The famous Frozen Dead Guy Days festival still draws visitors, but it doesn't offset the housing market's collapse. The town feels stuck between its eccentric past and an uncertain future. Number 19. Estes Park. Gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park. Estes Park depends on tourism, but home sales fell 50%. Fire insurance costs skyrocketed, and cabins that once symbolised escape now symbolise risk. The town faces an existential threat. Wildfire risk has driven insurers away, leaving homeowners trapped. Tourists still arrive, but the community is unravelling. Estes Park is a reminder that natural beauty alone can't sustain a housing market. Residents complain that the cost of living has soared while incomes remain stagnant. The result is a town that looks prosperous on the surface but is hollowing out from within. Number 18. Winter Park. Winter Park, long known as Denver's backyard resort, is experiencing one of the most visible collapses in the mountain corridor. What was once an accessible refuge for families from the capital has become a case study in excess and poor planning. Housing inventory shot up 120% in just 2 years, and developers, blinded by the illusion of infinite demand, built entire condo complexes that now sit empty. The contrast is painful. Ski slopes remain crowded with weekend visitors, but residential neighbourhoods look like ghost towns. New condos with modern finishes and prices over $600,000 linger on listings without offers. Locals complain that the economic model based on seasonal tourism no longer works. Worker incomes don't cover the cost of living, and investors who once saw profitability in short-term rentals are pulling out. Winter Park, once synonymous with accessibility, now faces oversupply and a lack of real buyers. Developers offer desperate incentives, $50,000 discounts, closing costs paid, even free remodels. But nothing seems enough to attract a market that no longer believes in the promise of profitability. The local community suffers the consequences. Small businesses that relied on permanent residents see their customers vanish. Schools report declining enrolment, and basic services struggle to hire staff. The town feels eerily empty, trapped between the image of a vibrant resort and the reality of a collapsed housing market. Winter Park has become a symbol of excess and poor planning, a place that bet everything on a tourism boom and now faces the hangover of that gamble. Number 17. Granby. Granby, located north of Winter Park, suffers a similar collapse, but with an even more painful twist. Here the crisis hits working families directly. For years, it was marketed as affordable mountain living, the refuge for those who couldn't pay Winter Park or steamboat prices. Today, that promise has turned into a warning. Foreclosures rose 30% in the past year. Families who bought modest homes with the dream of stability now face losing their property. Investors, who once saw Granby as a growth opportunity, are pulling out en masse. The result is a town unravelling socially. Local businesses suffer from the lack of customers. Restaurants, hardware stores and grocery shops report sales drops of up to 40%. A community once proud of its resilience now faces an uncertain future. Granby, once a refuge for those seeking lower prices, has become a symbol of collapse. The contrast is stark. While tourists still drive through on their way to Winter Park, Granby streets show houses with for sale signs and shuttered shops. Affordability, once its greatest asset, became a trap when the market collapsed. Granby is a reminder that even towns that seem safe can fall. The crisis here is not just financial, it's social. Entire families are forced to leave, abandoning a community that empties out day by day. Number 16. Gunnison. Gunnison, neighbour to Crested Butte, was always considered the working town, the support system that kept the region alive. With its university, airport and stable community, it seemed immune to real estate swings. But today, Gunnison is emptying out. Rents have risen 40% since 2020, while wages remain stagnant. Families leave, unable to sustain the cost of living. The town's support role collapses. Students face impossible rents, and professors leave for more affordable places. Gunnison's identity as an educational and cultural hub is under threat. The paradox is brutal. Its university should sustain it, but the housing crisis expels residents. The town becomes a place of transit without stability. Local businesses, dependent on students and families, report declining sales. Basic services struggle to hire staff. The result is a town losing its essence. Gunnison, once a symbol of resilience, now feels hollow. Streets still show activity, but behind the facade, the community is unravelling. Gunnison is a reminder that even towns with solid institutions can fall when the housing market becomes unsustainable. The crisis here is not only financial, it's cultural. The university, students, professors all face an uncertain future. The town seems to have pressed pause, stuck between its past as an educational hub and a devastating present. Number 15. Ridgeway. Ridgeway, known as the gateway to the San Juans, was for years a well-kept secret. Its rustic charm, landscapes and small community made it a refuge for those seeking tranquility, but that secret no longer exists. Housing inventory rose 95% and buyers vanished. The town faces an uncertain future. Its natural beauty attracts visitors, but not buyers. The housing market is sinking and the community struggles to survive. The contrast is clear. Tourists enjoy the landscapes, but residents face an impossible market. Local businesses suffer from the lack of customers and families leave. Ridgeway has become a symbol of the collapse of small towns. The paradox is that its rustic charm remains intact. Streets still show the beauty of a mountain town, but behind the facade, the community is unraveling. Residents complain that the cost of living is unsustainable, while incomes remain stagnant. Ridgeway is a reminder that even the most beautiful towns can fall. The crisis here is not only financial, it's social. The community fights to maintain its essence, but the housing market collapses. The town feels stuck between its past as a refuge and a devastating present. Number 14. Ouray. Ouray, the Switzerland of America, was one of Colorado's most dazzling towns. Its alpine landscapes, hot springs and historic charm made it a global tourist destination. But today, it faces a devastating collapse. Tourism revenues dropped 20% and home sales fell 50%. The postcard beauty hides a financial avalanche. The town faces an existential crisis. Its tourist identity is no longer enough to sustain the economy. Residents complain that the cost of living is unsustainable, while incomes remain stagnant. The result is a town that looks prosperous on the surface, but is hollowing out from within. Local businesses suffer from the lack of customers and families leave. Ouray has become a symbol of the collapse of mountain destinations. Its beauty remains intact, but behind the facade, the community is unraveling. The town faces an uncertain future, stuck between its past as a tourist destination and a devastating present. Number 13. Manitou Springs. Manitou Springs, near Colorado Springs, thrived for decades with its bohemian vibe. Its art-filled streets, festivals and alternative community made it a cultural refuge. But today, it faces a devastating collapse. Rental vacancies have reached record highs and the housing market is broken. The charm remains, but the economy is unraveling. Manitou faces a paradox. Its cultural identity endures, but the housing crisis expels residents. The contrast is clear. Tourists enjoy the bohemian vibe, but residents face an impossible market. Local businesses suffer from the lack of customers and families leave. Manitou has become a symbol of the collapse of cultural towns. The community fights to maintain its essence, but the housing market collapses. Residents complain that the cost of living is unsustainable, while incomes remain stagnant. The town feels stuck between its past as a cultural refuge and a devastating present. Number 12. Lake City. Lake City, tucked away in Hinsdale County, is one of Colorado's most remote towns. Its isolation, once its greatest attraction, has now become its worst enemy. Homes sit on the market for more than 200 days without selling, and tax revenues have dropped by 25%. The lack of buyers is obvious. Investors prefer places with better access, and locals simply can't sustain the prices. Surrounded by towering mountains and crystal clear lakes, the town feels frozen in time. Its quiet streets and slow pace attract tourists seeking disconnection. But that disconnection translates into a lack of opportunities for residents. Local businesses barely survive on seasonal tourism, and young families leave in search of jobs and affordable housing. Lake City is a clear example of how isolation can become a trap. What was once a refuge is now a place where daily life is unsustainable. The town seems to have pressed pause decades ago, and today struggles to find a future that never arrives. Number 11. Eagle. Eagle, located near Vale, was conceived as the labour hub that would sustain the luxury resort machine. Reality, however, is devastating. Schools report a critical shortage of teachers because salaries don't cover housing costs. Local businesses, from restaurants to supermarkets, suffer from the absence of workers. Luxury home inventory in Eagle has skyrocketed, but the properties remain empty. Owners, mostly outsiders, visit only a few weeks a year. Meanwhile, permanent residents face impossible rents. The community is unravelling, and the town is turning into a ghost space. Eagle is the perfect example of how a town can die socially before collapsing financially. The lack of workers threatens to paralyse the entire region, including Vale and Beaver Creek. A town that was once the beating heart of the working class now pulses weakly, trapped between the wealth of the resorts and the poverty of its own inhabitants. Before continuing with town number 10 and entering the final part of this journey, remember to subscribe and leave a like if you also feel that this trip has been worth it. Number 10. Pagosa Springs. Pagosa Springs was the epicenter of the Airbnb boom. Investors bought homes to rent short-term, convinced tourism would be endless. But the dream collapsed. Reservations fell 40% and luxury home inventory rose 95%. Properties sit on the market for more than 130 days, and buyers have vanished. The problem is twofold. Locals can't afford the homes, and investors no longer see profitability. The result is a market without buyers. The town streets, famous for their hot springs, show a painful contrast. Tourists enjoying the baths while houses remain empty. Pagosa Springs is a reminder of how local policies can change a town's destiny. The moratorium on short-term rental licenses destroyed the economic model that sustained investors. Today, the town faces an uncertain future, trapped between natural beauty and economic reality. Number 9. Durango. Durango, with its diversified economy, seemed immune to collapse, but home sales fell 52%. Builders face unsold condos, and rents require incomes of $90,000 while the median income is $72,000. The market is frozen. The problem is that sellers cling to their low-interest mortgages while buyers disappear. The result is a paralysed market with no movement. Young people leave and the population stagnates for the first time in decades. Durango faces a paradox. Its economy should sustain it, but the housing crisis paralyses it. The town, famous for its historic railroad and cultural life, has become a space trap between nostalgia and reality. Number 8. Silverthorne. Silverthorne is the epicenter of excess. Inventory rose 145%, and homes sit on the market for more than 128 days. Price cuts are massive, and restrictions on short-term rentals destroyed profitability. The result is a ghost town in the making. Developers who bet on an eternal boom now face catastrophic losses. Locals can't afford the homes, and investors no longer want to buy them. Silverthorne is a reminder of how excess can destroy a market. What was once a refuge is now a symbol of collapse. Number 7. Crested Butte. The ultra-luxury market in Crested Butte has frozen. Sales dropped 60%, and homes sit on the market for more than 210 days. Insurance premiums have reached absurd levels, $70,000 a year, turning properties into financial traps. What was once an exclusive refuge for billionaires is now toxic for the housing market. The wealthy who bought during the boom cling to their properties, hoping the market will recover. But those who need to sell face catastrophic losses. The town, famous for its authenticity and resistance to becoming Aspen 2.0, has turned into a place where that very authenticity has become a dead weight. The Crested Butte brand no longer attracts buyers, and real estate agents struggle to hide the magnitude of the collapse. The paradox is clear. What was once a symbol of exclusivity and romance is now a frozen market. Long-time residents complain that the town has become an empty showcase, with houses shuttered and streets losing vitality. Crested Butte seems to have pressed pause, stuck between its romantic past and a devastating present. Number 6. Steamboat Springs. Ski Town, USA sold its soul to luxury and now pays the price. Home prices doubled in just 4 years, while wages rose only 8%. That gap destroyed the local middle class. Schools lose students as families leave, and hospitals can't find staff because no one can afford to live there. The housing market reflects the collapse. Condo prices fell 25% and inventory skyrocketed. What was once a refuge for working families is now inaccessible, reserved for buyers who no longer exist. The community is emptying out. Multi-million-dollar ranches remain closed most of the year, and older condos sell at a loss. Steamboat Springs, once a symbol of balance between tourism and local life, has become a clear example of how a destination can lose its essence. The identity of Ski Town, USA no longer represents its residents, but a broken market. Number 5. Breckenridge. The king of mountain tourism is in deep crisis. Ordinances against short-term rentals wiped out 30% of property values overnight. Inventory rose 90% and transactions fall quarter after quarter. Main Street, the heart of the town, has 45 vacant shops, the highest number in its history. Breckenridge has become a theme park in winter and a ghost town in summer. Tourism still arrives, but visitors spend less, and residents face an impossible market. Investors who bet on quick profits are now trapped in losses, and locals complain that the community has emptied out. The town, famous for its mining history and charm, has become a symbol of the collapse of tourist destinations. The paradox is that Breckenridge still attracts crowds, but behind the festive facade lies a housing market in depression. Number 4. Telluride. Telluride's ultra-luxury market imploded. Sales of homes over $5 million fell 85%, and luxury inventory skyrocketed. Insurers are pulling out due to wildfire risk, and workers are transported from 2 hours away because no one can afford to live there. Telluride has become a museum, a beautiful but empty space. Residents are aging and the community is unraveling. The town, famous for its beauty and exclusivity, faces an uncertain future. The paradox is that Telluride remains a dream destination for tourists, but its housing market is broken. Homes sit for nearly a year on listings, and buyers have disappeared. The town feels frozen in time, stuck between its luxurious past and a present of crisis. Number 3. Edwards. Edwards, the labour hub of Vail, is collapsing socially. Schools report a critical shortage of teachers, and restaurants remain empty. Sales of affordable homes fell 60%, while luxury inventory skyrocketed. The town has become a ghost space, with residents visiting only a few weeks a year. Workers who once lived there now commute hours from other counties. Edwards is a symbol of the collapse of the working class in tourist destinations. The paradox is that Edwards was conceived as the real town compared to Vale's glamour. Today, that role has vanished. The community is unravelling, and the town has become a reminder that without permanent residents, no destination can survive. Number 2. Vale. Vale, the global icon, faces a devastating collapse. HOA fees exceed $2,000 a month, and transactions have fallen 70%. Inventory is outdated, with condos built in the 1980s. Buyers have disappeared, and sellers face massive losses. The town faces an identity crisis. What was once a luxury refuge is now obsolete. New buyers prefer more modern destinations like Jackson Hole or Big Sky. Vale has become a symbol of the collapse of global destinations, trapped in its own history. The paradox is that Vale still carries its name and prestige, but its housing market is broken. Homes sit for months unsold, and prices plummet. The town seems to have pressed pause, stuck between its glorious past and a devastating present. Number 1. Aspen. Aspen is the epicenter of collapse. For decades, the mantra was repeated, prices never fall here. That myth has crumbled. Aspen's housing market has suffered a 32% drop in median home prices, and sales have plunged 65%. Inventory has skyrocketed, and homes sit on the market for more than 275 days. What was once a symbol of exclusivity is now a museum of empty luxury. Mansions that once sold for $40 million now barely reach $28 million. Owners, many of them global billionaires, visit only a few weeks a year. The rest of the time, the houses remain closed, lights off, gardens neglected. The economic impact is devastating. Local businesses, from luxury boutiques to art galleries, report sales declines of up to 50%. Tourism continues, but visitors spend less, and the permanent community shrinks more and more. Aspen has become a ghost town of wealth, a place where affluence no longer guarantees stability. The paradox is brutal. Aspen remains beautiful, remains a global name, but its housing market has become the clearest example of how a dream can turn into a nightmare. The town that once seemed untouchable is now the ultimate symbol of Colorado's collapse. Now that we've traveled together through these 25 mountain towns, I can't help but think about everything I saw, everything I heard, and everything I felt. Because in these places, time doesn't run. It walks slowly, the way we do when we've finally learned there's no need to hurry. Maybe that's why I love them so much. Here, no one's racing to get ahead, because everyone knows the real reward is simply enjoying the journey. Coffee is still sipped without checking the clock. Conversations last as long as they need to, and smiles don't depend on any kind of screen. Sometimes I think that if we could choose, we'd settle down in a place like this, where winter still smells like wood smoke, where people still wave at each other on the street, and where memories aren't just something you look at in photos, but something you breathe in the air. Maybe that's what keeps drawing us back to these forgotten corners of the world. That feeling that for a moment, everything makes sense again. So tell me, now that we've taken this journey together, which of these towns would you choose? Which one can you see yourself living in, opening your windows each morning, watching the snowfall and listening to the silence? Share it down below. I want to know which one stole your heart, and see how many of us end up choosing the same town, or maybe even dreaming of living in the same place. And remember to subscribe to my channel to keep sharing moments like these, and give this video a like, in honor of these towns that keep standing still against the passing of time.